Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's a new deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on Red Dragon Archfiend. So we just got a new structure deck called the Crimson King, and they actually released a lot of good new support for the Red Dragon Archfiend archetype. And yeah, like Resonators have always been like Jack Atlas's, key monsters to go into his big synchro plays, and Konami definitely did a good job on this. Now, of course, this is a budget deck profile, so this is only going to include cards that were available in the structure deck. However, as soon as I get a couple cards in the mail, the whole deck profile is going to change dramatically. So just stay tuned for whenever I do the competitive deck profile, simply because, again, I'm going to be upgrading a lot of cards, and yeah, there's going to be some major changes. But for now, again, I'm just using cards that were only in the structure deck, and so forth. All right, so let's get started. The main deck is 40 cards, starting off with the new 3 copies of Soul Resonator. This card is actually pretty cool. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 level 4 or lower Fiend monster from your deck to your hand except itself. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Dark Synchro monsters, which is perfectly fine because our entire extra deck is Dark Synchro, so yeah, you don't have to worry about that kind of restriction. If a card you control would be destroyed by card effect, while you control a Red Dragon Archfiend or a Synchro monster that mentions it, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. And of course, you can only use each effect of Soul Resonator once per turn. And of course, for Soul Resonator, you got plenty of targets to search out for, but we'll get into those momentarily. Next up, 3 copies of Vision Resonator. This is definitely going to go down to 2 once I upgrade this deck some more. If a level 5 or higher Dark Synchro monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then, of course, it also you can only special summon this card once per turn this way. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 spell or trap that mentions Red Dragon Archfiend from your deck to your hand. Next up, 3 copies of Crimson Resonator. This was actually first printed in Eternity Code, so yeah. Funny enough, one of my structure decks was missing a copy of this, but again, since I did open up quite a bit of Eternity Code, I was able to find my 3rd copy pretty quickly. But anyway, if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If the only other monster you control is exactly 1 Dark Synchro monster, you can special summon up to 2 Resonator monsters from your hand or your deck except itself. And of course, you can only use each effect of Crimson Resonator once per turn. Let's see. Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure there was nothing else. Next up, 2 copies of Synchron Resonator. If a Synchro monster is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand, so basically it's just a extender piece. But I also like that these are all tuners, so yeah, you basically keep, synchro summoning as much as you want. If this card is sent from your field to the grave, you can target 1 Resonator monster in your graveyard except itself, add it back to your hand. So yeah, Synchron Resonator is pretty strong. And keep in mind, this is not a once per turn effect, so yeah, Synchron Resonator is pretty nuts. Next up, 1 Red Resonator. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 additional level 4 or lower monster from your hand. When this card is special summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, gain life points equal to its attack. So it's a good way just to get a little life point advantage, and so forth. And the last of our Resonators, 1 copy of Creation Resonator. If you control a level 8 or higher Synchro monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. So just yet another extender piece if you want to run it. Alright, moving on. I'm playing 3 copies of the new Bone Archfiend. This is one of your main targets for your Soul Resonator. If this card is in your hand or your graveyard, you can send 1 other card from your hand or field to the graveyard, special summon this card. And of course, it does lock you into Dark Synchro monsters, well, Dark Dragon Synchro monsters, but again, that's okay. That's basically what our extra deck is. You can target 1 face-up monster you control, and this can include itself, that has a level. Send 1 Fiend tuner from your hand or your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, increase or decrease that monster's level by 1. So it's a good way just to, level modulate, so that way you can just go into your specific synchro monsters and so forth. Next, 3 copies of Wandering King Wildwind. This card is actually crazy because it's searchable now. But if you control a Fiend tuner with 1500 or less attack points, in which case your Soul Resonator, or actually any of your Resonators really, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if it's special summoned this way, you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn except Synchros. Again, no problem. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, add 1 Fiend tuner with 1500 or less attack points. So yeah, Wildwind is super crazy. I love this card so much. Next, 3 copies of Escator Dawnwalker. This is actually the only non-fiend monster we have. Well, actually, technically, that's not true, because we are running the Fire Ant Escator. Basically, what you do with this card is like you discard one card, special summon this card from your hand in defense mode, and then you can special summon one Fire Ant Escator, which is going to be this thing. And that's it. That's really all this does. And the whole point of this is just so you can go into an instant level 8 synchro monster. We do have the new Sepei. Of course, people are now leaning towards Sepei Dawnwalker instead, because she, even though she's a level 5 as well, Sepei is a level 1. So you basically go into your level 6 synchro monster, which we're going to address in a moment later. But yeah, that's going to be the more ideal choice instead of Escator. But yeah, or Escator. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But yeah, like overall, like for the structure deck, this is pretty good. All right, so that pretty much rounds up our monsters. Moving on to spells already. All right, for our spells, obviously you're going to be playing 3 copies of Resonator Call. It's Rhoda, and it's not once per turn. So yeah, definitely great for the strategy. Originally, I was thinking of running Pot of Extravagance, but then I kind of came to the logic that you don't really want to banish your extra deck, at least not randomly. Because like, once I upgrade this deck, I will be playing Pot of Prosperity. And at least there, I can choose which cards I want to banish. Where Extravagance, like, there's a possible chance I'm going to banish all my important cards. And again, I'd rather not run that risk. So I'm opting to play 3 copies of Resonator Command. You discard 1 Resonator and add a level 4 or Fiend monster from your deck to your hand. So, not too bad. Next up, 3 copies of Crimson Gaia. I believe this is one of the new cards. During your main phase, you can add 1 Red Dragon Archfiend or a card that mentions it from your deck or your graveyard back to your hand. When your Red Dragon Archfiend declares an attack, you can change all monsters your opponent controls to face-down defense mode. If a monster or monsters on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 Red Dragon Archfiend from your graveyard. And of course, you can only use each effect once per turn, so definitely a crazy card overall. Next up, 1 copy of Absolute Power Force. Target 1 Red Dragon Archfiend you control. If that monster, target 1 Red Dragon Archfiend you control. If that monster you control battles an opponent's monster this turn, apply one of these effects. Or actually, apply these effects until the end of the damage. It gains 1,000 attack points. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects. And if it attacks a defensive position monster, inflict piercing damage. Any battle damage your opponent takes from the battle is doubled. So yeah, this card is pretty OP. I know some people might not be running this, but I just chose to run just 1 copy of it. Target 2 Resonator Engine, I'm sorry. You can target 2 Resonator monsters in your graveyard, add 1 level 4 monster from your deck to your hand, and then you can return the other 2 targets back to your deck. So it's just a good way to recur your resources. Next up, 3 copies of Red Rain. I believe this card was actually a super in Eternity Code, so I have to look into my bulk. But if you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster, banish all monsters on the field except the monsters with the highest level. Also, the remaining face-up monsters on the field are unaffected by other card effects except their own until the end of this turn. If a dark dragon synchro monster is synchro summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card back to your hand. So yeah, Red Rain is pretty strong, so definitely don't underestimate this card. Next up, 1 copy of Red Zone. This is also a new card from the structure deck. When your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Red Dragon Archfiend or a synchro monster that mentions it, you can target 1 card on the field, destroy it. You can target 1 of your banished Dark Dragon synchro monsters, special summon it. So it acts as a disruptor and a monster reborn. So yeah, Red Zone is pretty strong. And of course, the last 2 cards, 1 Fiendish Golem, which basically helps you. It's basically what's that card? Compulsory evacuation device, or no, something like that. I can't remember what it is, but it's basically one of those kind of cards. But you target a monster on the field with 2,000 more attack, banish it until the end phase of the next turn. And then if you activate it this way, you control a Red Dragon Archfiend or a synchro monster that mentions it. You can set 1 Fiendish Chain directly from your deck to your field or your graveyard. So yeah, it basically recycles Fiendish Chain. But yeah, like Fiendish Chain's not too bad. It's just another good disruptor. But unfortunately, you cannot activate it immediately because again, you have to set it first. So that's the only downside to this card. But overall, like, it's not too bad. But anyway, that pretty much rounds up our main deck. Now for the extra deck, oh boy, this is going to be a ride. So starting off with 3 of probably the most important card of your extra deck, 3 copies of Red Rising Dragon. So this is going to be the one you're going to make the most. Requires 1 Fiend Tuner, easy, and a non-tuner monster, easy. It's a level 6 synchro. When this card is synchro summoned, you can target 1 Resonator monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Of course, you cannot special summon from the extra deck. You know, I'm not going to bother with the restrictions anymore because they all pretty much have this. But during the main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card, target 2 level 1 Resonator monsters from your graveyard, special summon them both. So yeah, that's really good. And considering that Synchron Resonator is not once per turn, yeah, Red Rising Dragon is pretty strong. All right, 2 copies of the new Scarred Dragon Archfiend. I'm surprised this is not an ultra rare, it's a super rare, but oh well, can't be picky. Requires a tuner and a non-tuner dark monster. This card's name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard from the monster zone, you can special summon 1 Red Dragon Archfiend from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon, so that's pretty good. Then, if this card was sent to the graveyard as synchro material for a Dark Dragon synchro monster, you can destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. So yeah, I like the fact that not only does it give you an extra body, but this thing just basically acts as a nuke for your to your opponent. So yeah, I really like it. And of course, you're going to be playing 2 copies of the original Red Dragon Archfiend. Just, you know, that way you have a target for the Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend. Or the Scarred Dragon Archfiend. I keep saying Red Dragon. But anyway, we all know what this does. It's Jack Atlas's monster. After damage step or damage calculation, if this card attacks an opponent's defense position monster, destroy all defense position monsters your opponent controls. Once per turn during the end phase, destroy all other monsters you control that did not declare an attack this turn. Of course, this card must be face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. Next up, 2 copies of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Quick effect, you can target 1 face up monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of this turn. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target 1 tuner in your graveyard, special summon in defense mode. Of course, you can only use each effect of Archfiend Abyss per turn, so yeah. But I like it because this is probably going to be one of your best big bodies, especially because let's say your opponent activates Dark Ruler no more. If you chain a spell or trap, you can then use Abyss's effect in response to your own effect to negate Dark Ruler no more, and this is actually a common knowledge. So yeah, Abyss is probably one of the best ones. Next, 2 copies of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane. You can tribute 1 monster, then target 1 Red Dragon Archfiend monster in your graveyard, special summon it. When this card inflicts battle damage, you can special summon 2 tuners with the same level, 1 from your deck, 1 from your graveyard in defense mode. And of course, you can only use each effect of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane per turn. Next up, 1 Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. This is probably one of my favorite ones. This card's name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or grave. Once per turn, you can destroy as many other special summon effect monsters on the field as possible with attack less than or equal to this card's attack. And then, of course, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each monster that was destroyed. So yeah, Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend is pretty strong. Next, 1 Red Nova Dragon. This is one of the ones that requires 2 tuners and a Red Dragon Archfiend as its material. Gains 500 attack points for each tuner that's in your graveyard, so it gets pretty big. Cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effects. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can target the attacking monster, banish this card, and then if you do, negate that attack. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card was banished by its own effect, special summon this card. So it kind of has a sort of Stardust Dragon effect, so yeah. 1 Red Supernova Dragon, kind of the same thing as the previous one, but the main difference is this. It requires 3 tuners to make it, so yeah. I mean, it is possible, keep in mind. Must first be synchro summoned. Gains at 500 attack points for each tuner in your graveyard, so same thing. Cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effects. Once per turn, when your opponent's monster effect is activated, or when an opponent's monster declares an attack, quick effect, you can banish this card. Also banish all cards your opponent controls. So yeah, this thing basically acts as a nuke, but it banishes. Once per turn during the end phase, after this card was banished by its own effect, you can special summon this card. And finally, 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. We all know what this does. It basically just prevents your opponent from activating effects for the duration of the turn. So yeah, it's OP. Now for the side deck, I kind of had a hard time, working on this because like there aren't many cards that can basically, there aren't many options available in this structure deck that helps me build a side deck for. But I opted for, Battle Fader. I mean, that's a pretty good one. 2 more copies of Resonator Engine if I just want to play more Recurrence, or if I just want to go for like, just to make sure I, always OTK my opponent. Absolute Power Force, for just like more revival power, powerful rebirth. Terrors of Overroot's not a bad card, so figured try this out. and then 2 more copies of Fearless Chain. And yeah, that's it. Well, anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and again, just stay tuned for the actual competitive build for this deck. And yeah, I got a lot of work to do, so until then, I'll catch you guys next time.